I think that boundaries are a relatively new term, and I think that most boundaries that don't fall within normal social etiquette, if you just tell me arbitrarily, I've decided you can't talk about this, and if you don't do that, you're doing something wrong, I think that's very manipulative. So how
What
would you enforce your boundary?
I'd say, hey guys, I prefer if people take their shoes off inside because I'm not a disgusting pig.
Okay, so it's like a joke between you and your friends.
But I'm serious. Like, I will continue to bug them until they take their shoes off as well.
What would happen if I said no?
I'd probably just leave it. But then if you came inside again, especially if you tracked any mud, I'd be like, oh, whoops. Guess you should have taken your shoes off.
If your husband died and someone wore a bright pink, like hot pink dress, you wouldn't feel disrespected? You wouldn't feel like
my husband is dead?
Wrong?
I know. I don't give a fuck.
You feel disrespected by people not wearing shoes in the house.
No,
you wouldn't feel disrespected.
You said I feel disrespected.
Hold on.
I've got 8 years of a very, very happy marriage, and you are, I think, still single, so controlling.
Well, it was open at a certain point, so I don't know how happy it was.
It was never open, and it's very happy. Exceptionally happy, actually.
You guys went on dates with other people.
He went on a date once, yeah. I don't know if Grace is here. Hello.
Hello, sorry.
You're good. I don't want to fight about Sarah Stock. I don't even think we'll... Yeah, I just don't care. Sexually mature women who accuse men of grooming.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming on. Most boundaries that aren't just normal social etiquette are a way of controlling people and should be moralized. Yeah, the boundaries one is interesting to me.
Okay, let me see. I forgot what I wrote. Let me see here.
Most boundaries that aren't just normal social etiquette are a way of controlling people and shouldn't be normalized.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I can defend that one.
Okay.
By the way, I did just want to say, you know, I was there in Word Debate, and I just wanted to congratulate you on pushing back on the Pearl thing, because that was pretty ridiculous.
Oh, like them glazing Pearl?
When they were glazing her?
They had to. Look,
I mean, they just weren't recognizing basic reality. Like, I probably agree with Pearl more than you do, but I mean, it was just embarrassing. Anyways.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so I think that boundaries are a relatively new term. And I think that most boundaries that don't fall within normal social etiquette, like, you know, don't swear in front of old people, be polite to strangers, be hospitable when you're having people over. Boundaries outside of that are manipulative and a way to control people. It's a way to say, I have an excuse to put rules on you. And I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it should be normalized now.
Okay. So would you agree that most of the boundaries that you listed are boundaries that we have for, like, how we act in public spaces around strangers, and that these wouldn't necessarily be the same boundaries that we enact with, like, interpersonal partners, right? I swear around my partner, and there's probably a lot of things that I could do around my husband that I wouldn't do in public, but there's also certain things that I would never do to my husband that I might do to somebody in public. So can we agree that, like, closeness will shape and change the way that you have boundaries?
Yes, but I also think that I'm just giving, like, broad examples. I think there are also examples even with people you're super close to. There's social etiquette within families too, of course. Like, of course, like, if you and your brother call each other names, that's not appropriate to do to a stranger, but that's normal, you know, family etiquette, is that you're freer with your family. But I'm saying, like, if you were to say to me that one of your boundaries is that you're not okay with talking about dogs, for example, I think that's unhealthy. I think it would be a way of exerting power over me in this situation. And it's using a sort of psychobabble excuse to say, I'm going to exert power over you for no real reason. You know what I mean? If I was rude and you said that was rude, that's one thing. But if you just tell me arbitrarily, I've decided you can't talk about this, and if you don't do that, you're doing something wrong, I think that's very manipulative.
Why do you think it's power? Like, can somebody just be
Because
like
you are.
pathetic? Like, so what? Say I say like, "Hey, I'm really afraid of the D word. I got bit as a child, and I never want to hear about it ever. So you can't talk about the D word around me." Do you think that that's a power thing? Might be fragile, but it's definitely not power.
Um, I mean, okay, the first thing I would say is that generally people don't express boundaries in that way. Of course, you can express a boundary that way, but boundaries are one-sided basically. You're not asking the other person. See, what you just did there is you actually made a boundary two-sided and you gave the other person the opportunity or the chance to say yes or no. Most times when people use boundary talk, they're saying you can't do this. Period. There's no question like are you okay with that or not? That's just it. Do you know what I mean? It's a domination
Um,
thing.
I would just say that when people are so like to some extent, arguably, I'm doing if say I said don't say the D word, I'm doing the same thing. Because if you choose to use the D word, there's a pretty high chance that I'm gonna get mad at you, or I'm gonna like stop talking to you, maybe even go so far as to like end the relationship, right? So it's like it's necessarily one
Yeah.
sided
It's a
because
threat. It's a threat.
yeah, to some extent.
It's a threat that I mean, there's always a threat that somebody will stop talking to you if you break normal social rules, of
Well, even
course.
if you break social
But
rules that they arbitrarily create, right? It's just like it's up to you to
right, but
follow
I don't
them.
think but if somebody art like I don't think it's up to us one person to arbitrarily create a rule for a conversation and then exert power if that rule isn't followed. My point is people can do that, of course. You can do whatever you want, but I think that's unhealthy and I think normalizing that is normalizing unhealthiness.
What if based on
Do
the
you
dynamic
would you
that's
not
going
agree any
on,
yeah.
that you need like a unique boundary for that relationship that you might not have with anyone else? Right? For example, like I can imagine I might have a boundary with one friend who is maybe like an abuser and has like abused drugs around me or something like that. And while they don't erect the boundary, I say to them like, "Hey, I know you're a substance abuser. Like, I'm not talking to you about drugs. I'm not glorifying drugs. Nope, we're not talking about it." And I would never have that boundary on literally anybody else. And it's completely one-sided, especially assuming in this case the other person doesn't agree that they're an addict and doesn't like that I'm telling them that they can't talk about this, so they don't want to. And I say, that's my boundary. If you want to talk to me, you can. If you talk to me about this thing, I'm hanging up. It's all the things you're listing. And it shouldn't be, that's not okay.
Well, by the way, your chat is just saying I'm low. I don't know if that's true, but I don't
I
know if you can
bumped you
turn
up
me up on
already.
your side.
Yeah, I bumped you up
Okay.
already.
Um, well, in that case, I would just ask you, why would you want to be friends with a drug abuser if you don't want to talk about drug abuse? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't
Um,
understand why you'd want to talk to that person, period.
I'm friends with people that
Or with
I
your
have
dog example.
problems with all the time. I'm typically friends with people, right? If somebody's an abuser, I might be friends with them and I'm not willing to talk to drugs about them because I want them to get better, but I'm not going to stop being friends with them just because they're a drug abuser. Usually I see people more complexly than that, right? Like one major glaring flaw might not be sufficient for me to terminate the relationship if there's other things that I value in that individual.
Okay, well, if you say like I don't want to glorify drugs with you, I understand that. Like I
But
think
that's a
that's I'm
boundary.
I'm not saying there's no exceptions to this rule. But if, for example, your dog example, and like I'm practicing here. I'm just trying to flesh this out. I do think it's ridiculous if like let's say you said I had a bad experience with a dog. I would rather you didn't say the D word. I do think that's ridiculous, and I don't think that people should be encouraged to do that with their friends or people they talk to. Like, you should get over you don't have a dog problem, but, like, if you did, you should get over your trauma about the dog and not
Probably.
put ridiculous rules on other people's speech. That is unhealthy,
What
like,
if you do
that's
both?
ridiculous.
I would say it is probably something. I don't know if I'd agree that it's ridiculous necessarily. Some boundaries are ridiculous, right? Like one of the benefits of boundaries is that the point of boundaries is people say, if you don't do this thing, it's going to have some negative effect on our relationship all the way up to potentially terminating the friendship. And the best part about boundaries is you can listen to the boundary and decide whether or not you're willing to honor it, right? And so if somebody, for example, doesn't ever want to talk about the D word and they're my friend, I'd probably be willing to put up with that to a point. But if they're never working on their trauma around dogs, I'd be like, bro, work on yourself, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't because they're placing this boundary on me. And because I'm like, man, the fact that you need this boundary on me means that your like trauma around dogs is so significant that it's having like marked impact on your functionality in life. Like it's not normal to function and not hear the word dog in our society. Like you're gonna have to work on this necessarily. But like, I don't know. Boundaries to me aren't like mostly moral. Like they're just, you just get to make them. Are they ridiculous? Yeah. But I mean, like, the grandma in public getting mad at me for swearing is just as ridiculous. Like, it's like, bitch, why are you policing my language? I don't even fucking know you, right? It's just ridiculous. But it's also like
Well,
probably a good thing to do.
I disagree. I don't think that's ridiculous because whether you agree with it or not, there are social norms and, you know, I mean it's less true now, but like swearing in front of old people is generally considered bad etiquette. It's not,
Yeah,
you know, it's
but who
just
cares?
I'm just talking about generally.
But who cares?
So I'm not really debating you about like whether social norms are good or bad. I'm just saying these are the social norms and boundaries are things that are
I
outside of the
agree.
social norm
But I'm basically
that people
saying
are putting in place.
social norms are just as much put in place. Like what I'm saying is the issue that you're taking with like random boundaries that people are making is the same issue that I might take with socially normalized boundaries that are normal for social etiquette. And I don't really care that they're normalized. It doesn't make the normalization of it doesn't make it more or less ridiculous. It can't be the case that because a boundary's novel, now it's ridiculous. It's like, well, of course not, right? It's not the novelty. The thing that
Well, not purely for its novelty, but the reason that social norms exist is because it's important to be able to get along with one another. And these are like long established norms that,
yeah,
you
but we can
know,
get along.
coincide with human nature and help everyone to respect each other.
Yeah, but Meemaw can get along with me if I like say fuck, like sure, insulting her, like that might be a different line and that would be harder to get around, obviously. But like if I just swear in my common parlance and Meemaw can't get over it, I would argue Meemaw should get over herself. Like it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know
No,
you.
of course there's context. I I told my grandpa to go fuck himself at one point because he said the same thing to me, just not that explicitly. Okay, so like there are different contexts for things. I'm just using that as an example of a social norm, and I don't think social norms are ridiculous. Like I think they're incredibly important, and everybody naturally does.
But
Like
they're kind of
you
arbitrary,
can't
right? Like
walk
the
around
social.
naked. That's a social norm.
Yeah,
You
there's
could
some
say, why can't you
universal
walk around
ones.
naked?
Well, there's some universal ones that we like establish, but like there's a lot of social norms, for example, that exist in Japan that you would probably find ridiculous, even though they're pretty standardly agreed upon, right? Like there's different social norms in like certain like native spaces about eye contact that are very
Of
oppositional to how like
course,
white
they're
people
different for
are.
every society.
Yeah, but like
I'm saying American, I'm talking about like Western society because boundaries only exist in Western society because we're so privileged that we've started making up new rules about stuff. Okay,
no, I
so
mean boundaries exist
we're
in all
talking about
societies, right?
Western society.
Well,
Sorry?
every society has boundaries. They might not call it boundaries necessarily, right? But like if somebody in the Middle East says something that upsets his mom or something like that, even if it's not about a social etiquette, she might like hit him. There's like the classic thing of like moms hitting their sons with like sandals and stuff like that, right? So it's like that's kind of like her establishing a bit of a boundary. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think what you're describing is just normal etiquette. I would say we have to like if I think what I'm trying to do is I'm saying boundaries are something personal and arbitrary that are outside they're
Yeah.
added to
Yeah,
social
all
norms that you already
relationships and cultures are going
expect
to
of
have
other
this.
people.
I imagine that there are Middle Eastern couples and families that within themselves have arbitrary random boundaries that they've established for each other and how they conduct themselves or how they even just like the boundaries and rules upon like how they home bake probably vary and are kind of like random and arbitrary. But that doesn't make them
Yeah, but you're
ridiculous.
mixing you're mixing two different things. You're mixing different people's interpretations of normal like social norms, like different
No.
households and stuff like that. You're mixing that with saying boundaries. I'm saying boundaries are a you would admit like they're a new concept, which is that you can control other people's speech and actions around you based on your boundaries.
I
Or if
don't
they
think
don't
that this is
respect them,
new.
you don't interact with them.
I don't think that this is new. I think the like labeling of it is maybe like newish. It's not even that new, but it's like, yeah, I mean, the social etiquette of don't swear in public is just like something that somebody made at some point that people made as like a global enough boundary that most people understand it as a norm. But it's like, it's the same thing. It's like arbitrary, somebody made it up and then enough people agreed to do it that it's like now a social norm. But it's no different than a
Well,
boundary.
okay,
It's no different than a
let me give you a
boundary. It's just more
let me give
globally
you a
accepted.
specific example. I met up with Lavloon, okay, and she's like she does OnlyFans, she does sex work with her husband publicly. And she met up with me and my dad and a bunch of other streamers. And she said, "You can talk about me being a hoe all you want, but you can't make any jokes about my husband. That's my boundary." And I, I don't I think that that is her way of asserting power over me and other people I was with.
Well, she's just
And
letting
I
you
don't think that's
know
healthy because if
her
I make
arbit.
jokes about your husband, well, I'll let you talk. I just want to finish. Just giving the example, why I don't think it's healthy. If I make jokes about your husband that you're not comfortable with, you can express that to me normally. And if I don't, then you won't have to. But if you start off the relationship by saying, I have a rule that you have to follow, that's a power play. And you're saying, are you going to listen to me or are you going to rebel against my play for power? And I don't think that's a healthy dynamic to encourage people to participate in.
I don't know. I feel like seeing boundaries necessarily as power struggles is probably more of like your internal thing. Like it's probably more of a tell on you than it is on other people. I think there are some boundaries that most people can reasonably read and go, the way they're delivering this, everything about it, this is definitely like a weird controlling thing. And you're going to be like, yeah, fuck that person. But I think, for example, when I meet like a new person, I might have like arbitrary things that like I do or don't like, right? Like I don't really like small talk. I also don't like Mr. Girl like meta conversations with people I've just newly met. So in many ways, I'll establish a boundary if I start seeing that occurring. It's just like, I don't know, like preempting the rules of engagement with you and your like preferences, I feel like is not necessarily bad or controlling. It's just like being direct about like preferences, especially if the preferences are like reasonable enough and easy enough to do and people are willing to do them, which I imagine in the case of Lav, probably most people are just willing to do her boundary request. And I think it's a reasonable enough boundary.
I guess I fundamentally disagree with you. I don't think that preempting the rules of engagement, unless you're doing something formal, like if you're doing a formal debate, okay, there are rules, there are boundaries that are put in place by that debate. No personal attacks, no swearing, stick to your time, right? Those are external boundaries within a set time period that both sides agree to. Okay, but preemptively telling someone else what the rules are for engaging with you is not normal. That's I
Yes.
I I I think you actually agree with me because you're saying boundaries within reason. So all you're really
Well,
saying
the
is
issue
like
is
you
that
can
like
communicate what you're uncomfortable with in a normal way, which I would also agree with.
Well, the issue is like it sounds like you're treating boundaries as this like unique novel thing. Like to me, what's the difference between a social norm, like these social etiquette norms and a boundary? What's the actual difference between them?
Okay, and the example I gave, I would say that if I like for so with Lav and her husband, if I was rude about her husband and made a joke that wasn't funny and was just like nasty, that would be me violating social etiquette, which like is commonly expected of people when they're interacting with each other. But so that would just be me breaking the rules, and she can express her anger at that or whatever in however way she wants to. But if she preempts the conversation by saying, you can't make any jokes about my husband, and that's this neutral thing that we call a boundary, which you're expected to respect, then it becomes an assertion of power over me. I have the right to control your speech. And if you don't respect it will my control, then you are doing something immoral,
So
right?
sorry,
Do you see how that's different?
no? What's the difference between a boundary, like a individual boundary, a person Lav's boundary, and social etiquette not to swear in front of seniors? What's the actual like meaningful difference here? And when I say meaningful, I mean like something foundational. It can't be that it's Lav, right? That's not actually what matters here. What's the meaningful distinction between these two things?
Well, the distinction is that normal social etiquette is expected of everyone, is not unique to each person. and is generally recognized if it's violated. Whereas boundaries are a personal way to control someone else's speech that are presented as neutral things that are really an assertion of
Isn't social etiquette to control your
power or a
speech too?
demand over someone else.
Isn't social etiquette to
Yes,
control
but
your speech
it's
too?
different because it's not one person to the other, it's the entire society agreeing.
Well, it's kind of one person
So
to another,
it's
right?
not a
Because like,
personal power thing.
well, it kind of is, right? Because like, for example, if you wanted to shirk social norms, an individual would shirk social norm and a number of other individuals would like tut at them, right? There'd have to be like a sufficient number of individuals shirking that social norm to get rid of that social boundary, as we could like call it, right? Like all of these things are, they're kind of the same. It sounds like the thing you don't like is that it's just an individual like erecting a boundary, but also you would probably totally grant me individuals are allowed to erect unique boundaries for themselves. Like, of course they are, beyond just social etiquette. You can choose to listen to them or
Yeah,
not.
like there's exceptions. Of course, there's exceptions. Well, maybe
I call
we're
these
talking about the
exceptions.
same thing. I don't know that I don't know if we're. Can you give me an example of a boundary that would be different from normal social etiquette from your perspective?
Yeah, don't talk about dogs around me.
No, I mean like a legit one, not like a ridiculous example.
Let me think. Oh,
Like something you could think of saying to someone or
yeah.
a
So
friend.
people don't get to wear their shoes around my house, and it's a really common social norm in America to wear your shoes in people's houses. And I am so autistic about it that I will impose it at shared Airbnbs with Americans. Like any space that I am staying over for the night, unless it's somebody else's like active home, I will ask people not to wear their shoes inside. That's like a
Okay, see,
yeah.
I would say that that is a way of you asserting dominance over others that is unhealthy, especially in a shared situation.
What's
In your
unhealthy
own
about it?
home, I mean, you can have your own rules in your own home. I don't know if that's so much a boundary as it's just your
There's a
house
boundary in my
rules.
home.
That's different than I know,
Why
but
would it be different if
it's
it's in my
different.
home?
I'm talking about social like interaction boundaries, not so much like rules in the house. Like if you say
Rules in
like
the house are
we only drink
mostly just
filtered
boundaries too,
water.
right?
I mean, but if your mom says we're only drinking filtered water, not tap water from the Brita filter, that's not really a boundary like the way I mean it. I mean like it like social, like interpersonal, not like physical.
I mean, it's not
If that makes
interpersonal to
sense.
say please don't wear your shoes inside the Airbnb. It's like cleanliness, arguably.
When you take it when just in your example, when you take it to a shared Airbnb, I do think it's sort of I think it's sort of narcissistic to expect everyone else to adhere to your rule because you just decided that it's the new rule for everybody. Like, why should that be the case?
Sure, but if it's narcissistic, then narcissism's fine, right?
Well, in a shared space, in your house, you can do whatever you want, but in a
Why?
shared space,
Why?
well, it's yours. You paid for it. You can set it up however you want.
I helped pay for the Airbnb usually, right? I'm a paying customer.
Right, but well,
I'm not
I
the
think
only
it's
one.
unhealthy to encourage. No, no, I agree. In a shared, you would pay a share, but like in a shared space, it's unhealthy to see yourself as someone who can just uh make rules for everyone else and not have to persuade them to follow them just to
Who said I
say
made
this is my
rules?
boundary and if you don't do it, I'm leaving.
Well, that's not what
Well,
happens necessarily either, right? Like, typically I'll say
so how would you enforce your boundary?
I'd say, hey guys, I prefer if people take their shoes off inside because I'm not a disgusting pig. So if you guys can take your shoes off, that would be great. And then when people don't take their shoes off, I'll say, hey, do you mind taking your shoes off? And then they will take their shoes off usually because most people don't really mind. And I usually
Okay,
make fun of
but
Americans for
did
being
you
dirty
you
and disgusting.
okay, so it's like a joke between you and your friends.
But I'm serious. Like I will continue to bug them until they take their shoes off as well.
Okay, but did you offer them a chance to agree to that or not, or did you just set it as a rule that they have to follow?
I mean, if they absolutely like, I will not take my shoes off, I'll be like, that's really weird, but okay.
Okay, so I think that that is somewhat antisocial behavior. I would say
What, them
in
leaving their
that
shoes
case
on
then.
or me asking them to take their shoes off?
I would say I would say what you're doing if you don't ask the group beforehand, are we all okay with this? And you just personally enforce a rule on all of them that you've decided they should all follow. I think that's not very pro-social.
It's not really, how is it antisocial? One person taking the lead is
Because you're
bad?
not really you're not really communicating with them. You're just
Sure I am.
enforcing your what you want on them. It's sort of like dictatorship, just in this
Sort
one
of.
weird specific
In the
area.
same way that like a social leader, for example, might be sitting with their group of friends. I'm sure you've seen this. Like the social leader, like they're sitting with their group of friends, they're trying to decide what to do, and then eventually the social leader just decides what they're doing. They're like, we're doing this. And then regardless of kind of
Sure.
how different members of the group feel, they'll just kind of have to do it anyways because that's what the rest of the group is doing, right? That's kind of like the same thing with this. Like I'm just utilizing social pressure and social leadership to make a preference, and most people are just willing to go along with it. It's not that big of a deal. In the same way that like if I entered an Airbnb with somebody and somebody was like, hey, I really prefer like perfumes are not like used in the space, I'd be like, okay, I don't care.
Yeah, see, but those are two different things. If you say, "Hey, I know it's weird, but I would really like it if you didn't use perfume because I'm super allergic or I get super sensitive."
So the delivery
That is
is the
socially that well, that is normal. That's not asserting
but the
power
only
over
different
someone.
the
That's
only difference
asking them.
here,
That's
well,
requesting. If
I'm
you have a
asking them to
preference and you
take their shoes off
request,
too. But I imagine with the perfume person, if I use perfume, they'll probably say something about it. Be like, hey, remember, like I asked if you could not use perfume, right? So, like, yeah, they're saying it nicer, but it's the same thing, which is establishing kind of an arbitrary boundary.
I disagree. I disagree because a boundary implies like a necessary respect of the boundary, whereas a request implies freedom on the other side.
I mean,
So if I
the
say
reality
my
is that
boundary
the
is
perfume person is
yeah.
not actually implying freedom. They're saying, don't wear perfume around in the house with me. That's what they're saying. They're just saying it nicely.
Mm,
Which I agree.
no, they
You
are
should
implying
establish
freedom.
your boundaries. So boundaries, what boundaries are is they are mostly arbitrary personal preferences that you like place onto other people, right? And you kind of like make something you prefer other people's problem, right? And so what you should do when you're doing that is be as maximally nice as possible. But I don't think like making these asks are like bad, right? Unless the ask
I
is
agree.
delivered in a bad way, or if the ask is so beyond like the level of like reasonable ask to make of people, and when people refuse to, you don't like respect them to like any level of degree. But I don't think it's like I don't think any of these stakes are super high.
Mm,
But again, it
I
depends,
disagree
right?
because
Boundaries could be used to be
boundary
abusive, but most are not.
true, but well, boundary implies is has a moral implication because there is a general societal agreement that if you don't quote respect someone's boundaries, right? If you don't respect someone's boundaries, you're doing something immoral. So
No,
when somebody says this is my boundary, oh yeah,
no.
generally speaking, if someone says they didn't respect my boundaries, everybody says, yeah, that's wrong for them to do.
Well,
So
it
if
depends on
you
the
tell
boundary.
someone
But
this is my
wait,
boundary,
is it because of the action itself is wrong, or is it because you're like violating something that somebody explicitly asked you not to do that's wrong?
it's because it's assumed, and I think this is unhealthy, that setting a boundary, which is putting an arbitrary rule in place based on your preferences that you
Hmm.
demand others to follow, is seen as a like a neutral thing to do.
Well,
It's like,
you
no,
ask
you're perfectly
nicely
within your right to
first,
do that.
usually. Well, you usually ask nicely first, right? It's not really immoral.
Well, I think,
Like if I
but I
find
mean,
out if my friend is telling me
I
that
just
somebody
think,
crossed her
yeah, yeah.
boundary, right? And say so she's like, "Yeah, I told them, no perfume in the house," and they like wore perfume anyways. I'd be like, "Well, that's kind of weird. Like it's such a small stakes ask that like you should probably just like honor it because who cares, right?" But if she says, "Yeah, I told everyone that like because I'm vegan, they can't have meat in the house," I'd be like, "That's a lot more extensive. Like I don't know why you get to make that decision. I could understand people
Okay,
not respecting your
so
boundary, but even then,
yeah.
right, it would really depend on like how she had like worded all of these things. Like if she was like, hey guys, I prefer, but again, all these things are about like what's reasonable to make asks of other people, mostly depending on the level of social rapport that you have with people, right? Typically in my friend groups, I'm probably one of the more charismatic, highly like high charisma, high powered individuals. I'm usually one of the main people coordinating the group hangouts anyways, and like why they're occurring in the first place. And so I think it's usually viewed pretty reasonable that I get to be like the mother hen of the house, and I make certain like cleanliness requests of everyone to maintain, and mostly because people enjoy it more, right? When you don't take your shoes off in the house, when we're at the beach house, we have to all clean up a lot less. And so there's like a tit for tat that happens where like, yeah, am I making like kind of arbitrary, maybe slightly annoying annoying requests of people? Yeah, but usually people are willing to go along with it because it like overall improves people's quality, or they just don't really mind me being persnickety that much because I come with so many other benefits of being like funny and interesting or something like that, right? Like that's how all this goes. It's like boundaries are like social cash-ins, right? And you can cash in as little or as much as you want. And if you cash in too much, then people are probably going to buck your boundaries, right? And whether they've bucked your boundaries or not, whether it's bad that they bucked your boundary or not, kind of depends on everyone's like somewhat like arbitrary rating of whether or not the person had enough social rapport to make the ask in the first place, right? The random vegan making the ask of a bunch of strangers, and we'll be like, that's really weird. You don't know this person. But that random vegan making the request to their partner might be a lot more reasonable, especially if the partner knew this entire time that they were vegan and that's how they felt about having roommates. And then they move in together. Everyone be like, what the fuck did you expect, boyfriend? Of course you can't have meat in the house, right? So I don't know. It's just gonna depend.
But with your okay, let me go back to your wearing shoes indoors thing.
Sure.
Let me challenge it a little bit. I don't think that you are actually setting a boundary. I think that you are convinced that wearing shoes indoors is morally wrong and gross.
I don't think it's morally wrong,
And
no.
so,
We think
well, you
shoes
would say you're dirtying the house and making more work for other people and it's gross, so you shouldn't do it.
doesn't make it
Like in
morally
the same
wrong.
way that
It's definitely
well,
gross.
I don't know.
It's not
Okay,
moral.
but you're saying that it's social. You're not really saying it's my special boundary. You're saying this is how it should be, and you guys are
Well,
gross.
usually I frame it from I usually make a Canadian joke. Yeah. So typically when I do it, because I'm a charismatic person, I understand how to make proper social boundary asks without being an obnoxious twat, right? Which goes, usually I start with some sort of accusation audit. So I go, hey guys, I'm so sorry. Can I be ridiculous here? I'm Canadian, so I'm a little persnickety. I just prefer if we take shoes off inside. I just think it keeps things a little bit cleaner. And that's like my preference. Do you guys mind doing that? And basically, 10 out of 10 times people say, no, not at all. And in fact, my Middle Eastern friends get very excited because Middle Eastern people feel the exact same way about Americans and them wearing their shoes inside. In fact, most people that are international agree with me on this thing. But regardless, that's typically how I do it, as I do it charismatically because I'm not retarded.
Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood you, but you said that pigs wear shoes indoors. Maybe you were just joking. I just
That
seemed
would be a
like you were
joke I
saying
would
like, no,
make.
this is actually gross.
It is gross. Yeah,
Yeah.
wearing your
So
shoes inside that you've walked around and stepped in unknown quantities of things inside constantly is gross. Yes. Having your shoes up on my couch is gross. Yes. Having your shoes on your bed,
okay, so
disgusting.
you think but what I'm saying is you don't really think it's a weird personal preference that you have that you politely request other people follow. You think that they're being disrespectful if they do that.
I don't think they're being
It's not even a boundary.
disrespectful.
It's
I think
like
they're being gross.
you think that they are
Nope.
right. Okay,
Do you
gross. But
wait?
if someone's being gross in your house, that's being disrespectful,
No, no. Do you think that
right?
if somebody doesn't wear deodorant around you, so they're really stinky, are they being like, are they doing something morally wrong when they do that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, me neither. But they're gross. It stinks.
Right, but
Yeah.
what you're describing is that okay, we can get away from the moral thing, but what I'm trying to
If I was
illustrate to
around
you is
somebody
I
who was
think
really stinky and I had to be around that person for a long time, I would also ask them to put on deodorant, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I don't want to be around stinky, gross things. But that's not because it's moral. It's not bad. They're not a bad person for being smelly. It's just gross. Put on deodorant. Take your
okay,
shoes off.
but I don't know how to explain this, but like you would agree Americans don't see it that way. Like shoes indoors is not seen as gross.
Yeah,
Like it's
I agree.
normal
Well,
for most Americans.
yeah.
Okay, so again, I don't think it's very pro-social for you as an immigrant with a different culture. I know it's just
What does me
Canadian,
being
but
an
like
immigrant have to do with
you're
it?
not well because you're from another culture. Like if in Canada, I believe you, it's not normal to wear your shoes inside. But to go to another country and to say to the people there that you're sharing an Airbnb with or whatever, that they have to follow your norms when you're the
I don't
not
say they
foreigner,
have
but
to.
you're the odd one out.
I mean, I don't say they have to. I ask them if they're willing to. That's usually how
But you
boundaries work.
basically force them by asking, and then if they don't do it, asking again. And you said you would be persistent, right?
Yep.
So that's basically forcing someone to do it.
Yeah, but I do it really
Right.
nicely and everyone enjoys it. And they laugh at my jokes the whole time. In fact, if you shared an Airbnb with me, I would ask you to take your shoes off and you would find it a perfectly positive and to neutral experience. And you'd probably be more than willing to
Okay,
take
but
your shoes off. Would you have an issue if I
what would
asked you,
happen?
say we shared an Airbnb and I was like, hey, just so you know,
Yeah.
super sorry. Do you mind if you take your shoes off? I just prefer our shoes are off inside. How would you feel about that? Do you think
I
I'm
would
doing
take
a
them off
power
because
struggle?
you're socially yes. For me personally, I would find it annoying.
That's okay.
But I would do it because you're socially pressuring me by being, I would say, passive aggressive. Like
There's
you're being
nothing passive
aggressive, but you're not
aggressive.
being
Nope,
open
there's
about it.
nothing aggressive either. Like making
Okay,
boundaries
well,
and requests of people isn't aggressive or passive aggressive, right? Passive aggressive would be like
what would
if I go like, "Oh my god, like piggies," which is like not what's happening, right?
well, okay, true, but what would happen? What would happen if I said no? Like, what
Um,
if I said no,
yeah,
thanks, I want to keep them on.
I'd probably just leave it. But then if you came inside again, especially if you tracked any mud, I'd be like, "Oh, whoops. Guess you should have taken your shoes off."
And what if I said like, yeah, still not going to. Thanks though.
I'd say, "Okay."
Do you not here's my point. Here's my point. Do you not see how that is now a power struggle between us? Because you're be socially
Nope.
pressuring me to do
Wait,
something,
didn't I just
and
say
I'm
I would
saying
say,
I'm not gonna
"Okay"?
do it, but it's now a power struggle, right? In that situation.
I think
No?
maybe you feel like it's a power struggle, but again, it feels like you read power struggles into things that aren't happening. Like I said, okay. So if you said absolutely not, I'm just like if fundamentally if somebody's absolutely unwilling to take their shoes off, I'd be like, okay, well, you're a little bit stinky, you know.
But
It's like somebody absolutely refusing to wear
but
deodorant.
you
I'd be
would
like, oh, you're a little
feel
stinky. I'm like whatever.
but okay, right, but you would feel like you could say to someone else, "I expressed a boundary and they did not respect my boundary." And you would feel morally
I probably
right
wouldn't.
that you were in the right.
I
So
wouldn't be
you wouldn't
moral.
feel
I
like I was
would
disrespecting your boundary?
uh no, disrespecting. No, I think you were not willing to uh honor my ask. Yeah, you were not willing to like give in to my ask. I wouldn't feel like you disrespected me.
But why wouldn't you say I didn't respect your boundary? Isn't it your boundary? And I'm disrespecting it.
How are
I'm
you
not trying to be
disrespecting it?
coded with the language. I'm just
You
saying
didn't say fuck you, you stupid bitch, for having that
because you
boundary. You just
set
said no. I'd be like, oh, Grace is a little bit gross. Okay, all right. Seems like a small
because
ass, but
you
like whatever.
set a boundary
Yeah,
and isn't this how the language works? You set a boundary and I did not respect your boundary.
yeah. I think I set a pretty
How
reasonable
is that not what
boundary.
happened?
Well, I said what I would
So
view
I
as
disrespected your boundary.
I don't. I guess I
No?
don't know what to tell you. I don't feel disrespected.
But
I'm pretty
okay,
chill.
I agree. Nobody does. All I'm saying is, would you say that I disrespected your boundary?
No, probably not. I don't think I would tell. I don't think it would be a significant blip in my life, if I'm being honest. But I'm like a decently chill person. I'm probably gonna make the ask.
I'm just saying
And
in
every
the
single time
hypothetical.
I
If
see you walking around my house walking around that shared Airbnb with shoes, I might make a joke about your shoes. It's possible. I'm not sure. It would depend on how annoyed you seem, though. Like if you seemed very annoyed the first time I asked, I would just let it be. The boundary isn't worth annoying you, right? Because what you're actually doing in reverse by getting mad at me at the boundary is setting a different boundary. You're saying, don't ask arbitrary, silly things of me. You're just doing the same. You're just making another boundary in return. It's just not explicitly being stated. It's being implied, right? Whereas most people are willing
I
to
would
have
say
arbitrary
no,
random
actually I
asks.
disagree.
You're of course making a
I
boundary.
disagree. I don't think I am making a unique boundary for myself. I think I would
It
be
doesn't matter if it's
following
unique.
social.
Well, you and I have
Well,
already
no, it
gotten
does
past
because
this.
boundaries are essentially they have to be unique. Otherwise, they're just social norms, right?
Well,
So,
the issue is we haven't
like
separated social
in the
norms from
example of Lav,
boundaries.
well, because boundaries by the necessity have to be different than social norms. Otherwise, they would just be called social norms, right? So, like in the example
No,
of Lav,
not really.
generally speaking, you might be able to make a joke about someone's husband. When she says you in this relationship, my boundary is you can't make any jokes about my husband. that is now a personal, unique boundary that she has set up. It's not a
Uh-huh.
social norm that you can't make a joke about someone's husband, right?
Yeah,
That's
okay.
not. Okay, so what I'm saying is, I would say in the shoe situation, I am correcting this is what I would say. I would say I am enforcing social norms that in a shared space, one person does not have the right to dictate what people wear and don't wear, apart from basic social norms like don't be naked around other people,
I think
right?
most people would probably
So
think
I
that's a
would say
weird
it's
way to
not a
take
unique
it, right?
boundary.
I would say it's
I,
definitely
it's not a unique boundary, in my
so
opinion.
you are establishing a boundary. Because
I am
most people,
establishing social
well,
norms.
there's within a social norm that people can make like somewhat arbitrary asks of each other sometimes, as long as they're not too like constraining or too like onerous, right? Like that's also a social norm. You're allowed to like make random little arbitrary asks
Right,
of
but
people.
in the shoe case, asking people to take their shoes off is not an American social norm, right?
So,
So, but allowing people
well, it
to
is for
do
some,
like to
but
wear whatever they want in the house is a social norm. So I would say I am enforcing social norms and you are making a personal unique setting a personal unique boundary.
well, you're
So when you come back at me and say
I,
you're just making a boundary for
okay.
yourself, I disagree.
So
Does that make
something
sense?
that's happening right now is you're kind of getting like you're trying to get lost in semantics, right? Like when like of like what these different like words are all meaning to like use it. So, you saying, well, what I'm doing is a social norm and what you're doing is a boundary because you're trying to say, well, what you're doing is bad and what I'm doing is good. And it's like, I don't know if it's a social norm that if people make like pretty small asks of each other, that you like rebuff it very firmly, right? That would be like weird. But it is a social norm that if people make small little asks and you say no, the social norm expectation of me would be to be like, okay, which is probably what I would do, right? What would not be socially normal is if I said like,
I
"Hey,
disagree.
okay, I don't know what to tell you. I guess like go spend time outside and talk to people, right? People make like arbitrary little asks of each other all the time, right? It could be like as small as like it could be an arbitrary ask
Not
of asking a
what you're
stranger.
describing.
You could ask a stranger, "Can you
Well,
watch
okay,
my
go
stuff
ahead.
for me?" Right? Like I could go to a stranger and impose like, "Do you mind watching my stuff?" Now that stranger is forced essentially to stay wherever they're sitting for the next 20 minutes and be vigilant to watch my stuff of a random stranger while I go do whatever the fuck I'm doing, whatever I want to do, right? That's like a little bit of a small
Yes.
ask. And it would be totally fine if that person said no, but it'd be a little atypical. Most people would just
Right.
say yes, but you could say no. And the person would probably be like surprised because it's more socially normal, more pro-social to say yes, right? Like, you
Um,
understand this? Right, but
in
both of
that
them would be
situation,
allowed.
it
You would
could
be allowed to say no to me asking you to take my
yeah,
shoes off,
it would be very neutral whether it's
but
yes or
people would be
no in
surprised.
with the luggage thing.
Yeah, people would be surprised because in general, we're
Well,
usually
so
willing to like honor like small persnickety little asks that people have, right? Especially,
yeah, but I
especially in this case where I have a
it's a
pretty
different
decent,
situation.
well, especially in this case where I have a pretty decent reason for my like tiny little ask, right? So for example, say I'm out in public and somebody is like playing music on their phone, but I happen to have like some sort of like ear issue and they're seated, let's say I'm on a plane, okay, and they're listening to music on their headphones but it's like kind of playing loud. It'd be like pretty reasonable for me to be like, "Hey, I'm so sorry, can you turn your music down a little bit?" Right? um Not a big deal. And if they're like, "Oh, it's all, I thought it was pretty quiet," so you're like, "Yeah, I just like have this ear infection where like any noise around me like kind of bothers it," right? I'm making like an extra level of ask. Most people are gonna just be willing to honor that, even though it's kind of silly and it's like an extra ask beyond the normal thing, because that's like normal tit for tat. But also the person could say no, right? And then the person's stuck in this position where it's like, okay, well that's
Yes.
kind of weird, but okay, well,
Right.
what's like the next answer?
What's the next answer? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, like what's the next solution if somebody next to you won't turn their music down, but it's like damaging your ear or hurting your ear in some reason? Okay, well now they're gonna have to like maybe get Kleenex to like try to plug their ear or something so that the
Yeah,
noise
you're
doesn't
just gonna
happen.
have to figure out a way to deal with it. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
there's some pro-social expectation from other strangers, but also they are free to do as they please, and sometimes you have to just grin and bear it. But I think that stranger etiquette is different. I agree. In any
Yeah,
situation, you can
of
ask
course.
someone to do something for
Yeah,
you.
level of closeness
But
varies the
you
asks and
described it
boundaries you can make.
Yeah, of course. But you described it yourself. Maybe you don't agree with it anymore, but you described it as a boundary that you would set for like, please do not wear shoes in
Yeah, in the
any
way that you define
house that I'm
boundaries.
in.
Well,
Right.
I think
Okay. So
I've
you're saying
walked you
that's a
through how I would
boundary.
deliver it. And you said, well, maybe that's okay because you're asking nicely. And it's like, well, it's kind of fundamentally the same thing as if I didn't ask nicely, right?
No, politeness and rudeness are not fundamentally the same thing. But you could say
Well,
whether the tone is one way or the
hold
other.
on, hold
I
on,
agree with you that it is.
hold on. No, 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 hold
No,
on.
I
Stop,
agree
stop,
with
stop,
you that the
stop. We're
essential
equivocating.
thing
We're
is the same
equivocating.
thing.
We're equivocating though, right? We're slipping between how we're like using words and like losing sight of the actual frame of the conversation. And the frame of the conversation here is, are boundaries A, unique in such a way from just social norms that matter in a fundamental way,
Hmm.
and B, are those
Right.
fundamental differences bad, almost in your extent
Correct.
tyrannical, right? And I'm saying, are they that
Do they
different from
encourage
social
unhealthy
norms?
power plays? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, tyrannical. Are they unhealthy? Are they fundamentally different than social norms? Not really. The only difference is the level to which like groups can know of the boundary and agree to it, which isn't that fundamental to me.
But
Especially because,
wait a second.
most importantly, because whether a lot of people know a boundary or only a few people know a boundary doesn't make that boundary good or bad, right?
Right, and there are exceptions, of course, but we have to agree on the definition. A boundary is different than a social norm. It's a different
How?
word. It means something else. It is a unique preference
But how is it
that you
morally
set.
different? Well, how is it morally different? Because
Okay, well,
you
we can get to that. We can get to that. I'm just saying, okay,
well, that's
we can
that's
get
the
to that
main
for
part
sure
that
because I agree.
matters.
I think there is a moral difference. But you agree with me that a boundary is a personal preference that you demand people in your group, whoever you express it to, meets, right? And a social norm is something that everyone within a certain society is expected to adhere to and is socially punished for if they don't adhere to it, right? Like it doesn't have to be uniquely expressed. Do we agree on just those definitions? Right?
Yeah, a social norm is a group agreed to boundary, and a boundary in the case of our conversation is something that like an individual might erect that is going to be different than what groups generally know to be a rule.
Okay, sure. So yeah. So
But the
that's why I
question
was
is,
saying
why is the individual erecting something morally bad in the way that the group erecting something isn't?
right. So the reason that it's bad is because it is encouraging um it is neutralizing antisocial behavior. That is the tightest way to say it. So, in your like let me give you a different example about the shared house thing. I don't think it would be I don't think it would be good. I don't think it would be okay for a Muslim woman. Let's say you're sharing a group of girls are sharing a house and there's a Muslim woman girl sharing the house with them. And it's a beach house. It's not okay for her to set a boundary saying, my boundary is that none of us wear bikinis, right? That's not okay. That's antisocial
Why is that
to
not
say to the rest
okay?
of the group.
The group might not listen to it, but it's totally okay to make the ask.
Not in the sense of saying, this is my boundary, because what you're doing is you're saying, I am entitled to boundaries
I
that
think you
I've
just have a
set. And
hang
if
up about
you
the word
don't,
boundary. It feels like this whole conversation is you really don't like when like white girls who have watched too much TikTok try to use boundaries to just like guilt you into being a bad person. It's like, yeah, sure, but like the problem isn't the actual concept of boundaries. It's like weaponized boundaries or weaponizing boundary language when it's not a boundary at all, right? Like it sounds like you just have an issue with how some people engage and utilize boundaries. And to that, I would say, yeah, some people engage and utilize boundaries poorly, but that doesn't make boundaries bad.
I think the entire concept is normalizing antisociality and in fact encouraging it
How?
because
Making
because
asks of people isn't
because
antisocial.
here's the thing, if you're in a group, okay, what a boundary the concept of boundaries allows you to say, I am entitled to set rules for the group as long as I express the rule and they should follow it or else they are doing something wrong.
I
Whereas
don't know. So this is
that is
the grace.
antisocial.
This is where I'm saying I think this is your stuff. Most people can understand that boundaries are subjective and they're typically agreed upon by two people, right? The person who makes the ask and the person who says yes or no. And usually, if it's like an interpersonal close relationship, say I make a boundary on Nick that he's not really willing to do, usually we'll have a conversation about it and find a compromise, right? That's typically what happens, right? And so it's like, I don't know why you're adding in and smuggling in all this extra layer of like power and control and like what all these things. Like that's not necessarily happening. Sometimes it's happening, and when it's happening, that's bad. But it's not bad because boundaries. It's bad because controlling behavior, or it's bad because somebody's being entitled towards other people, right? That's what's bad. Like if my boundary was every time I walk into the room, everyone has to clap and bow down, and that's my boundary. Okay, well, that's ridiculous, right? What an incredibly entitled and like strange thing to ask of people, right? But it's like, the problem here isn't that it's this it's not the boundary that's the problem. It's the nature of what's going on all within it, which is like the presumptiveness of putting onto other people, especially like with such a large ask on people for no apparent seeming reason other than like some self-congratulation. This is why all this stuff is so subjective and contextual. Like it's necessarily subjective and contextual, which is why some boundaries are fine and some boundaries are not fine. Like to me, the boundary that Lav gave you, I think it's fine enough. Whatever. If you don't want to do it, then don't hang out with Lav. This is really simple.
Well, I understand what you're trying to communicate, and like there could be some of that like lodged in there. Is that like generally people? I really haven't had much experience of people using boundaries, but yes, generally speaking, when people start talking about boundaries, what they mean is you need to listen to my rules and I feel entitled. Okay, so there may be some bias on my side, but I think the
That's not
concept in
usually
and of
what I read of
itself
people.
is I think the concept in and of itself is problematic. And my reason for that is in the example of the Muslim woman asking, setting a boundary and saying, can we not wear bikinis in this shared beach house, right? She is anti-sociality is breaking social norms, right?
No.
So the social norm when you're
No.
sharing a
Hold
house
on.
with people.
No. Why, no. That is not what
Yeah.
antisocial. No. You can just look this up. Antisociality is typically doing things that is like actively harmful to other people. It's not just breaking social norms, right? Me swearing in front of grandma isn't being antisocial, right? It's hostile, harmful behavior specifically.
Well,
So
if pro-social is following social norms,
it's
then
not.
anti-social.
Pro-social is doing good things, usually beneficial to society,
Okay,
or like good things, altruistic things, helpful things.
Now you're doing a little bit of the semantics thing, because you know what I mean. Antisocial also includes the fact that you are breaking social norms,
No,
right?
it does not. This is what I'm rejecting, because antisocial is typically used like decently moralized, right? Like antisocial is a bad thing to do. We can agree with that. Like when you do antisocial behavior, we're saying this is a bad thing to do.
Hold on. You said I could look it up. I literally looked it up. Antisocial. This is an adjective. Contrary to the laws and customs of society. Okay, so you could also say
Antisocial
that
refers to behaviors that are hostile or harmful to society, often involving a disregard for the rights and feelings of others. I don't even.
Okay, well, where are you finding that? I'm getting mine from Oxford Language.
Wikipedia.
Okay, so if if social norms encourage like helpful communal behavior, then breaking social
Sometimes.
norms or doing something contrary to the laws and customs of society, generally speaking, is harmful to society and therefore is antisocial.
Female genital mutilation is like a social norm of certain cultures. Is refusing to let your daughter get female genital mutilated being antisocial?
No, I said generally speaking. Of course, rebelling against social customs that are awful is not
Yeah,
it's antisocial to that culture.
harm
Yeah,
harm is the
true.
key. Yeah,
It's not
harm is the key thing
necessarily
here.
it's
Yeah.
not necessarily wrong to be antisocial in a society that has a lot of problems. It's not necessarily wrong, but you'd still be antisocial in that culture. You're not participating in societal norms.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Is like
I don't think anyone would characterize it in this way normally, but sure.
Okay, so the Muslim girl is breaking a social norm by the social norm is in a shared house. The hospitality is the norm. You let people do what they want to a large degree, and you don't put rules in place for everybody. that are specific to you and they don't follow, right? Hospitality towards others is generally the social norm in a shared house. You are
Well, it
breaking that
sounds like it's
social
your
norm.
social norm. A lot of people's social norm might be like kind of like agreed on, like mutual standards of conduct, specifically to like the person who's like maybe like the most conservative, right? It might, like, for example, in a lot of spaces, the assumed social norm is be most conservative about your behavior because you don't really know what's going to bother people, right? Like that's a more universal social norm. So it's not even so much as don't ask anything, it's try to be maximally conservative as much as possible. A social norm with a group of girlfriends, for example, would be she should probably let them know before they get to the house, because I would be annoyed if she said, hey guys, no bikinis, if she told me that the moment we get to the house and all I brought was my thong bikinis. I'd be like, bro, what the fuck? Right? That would be annoying. But if she
Right,
gives
you
us a
would
heads
say
up
that's
long before and says, hey guys, so like one of my preferred boundaries is that you guys don't wear bikinis. Now, to be frank, I would say, hey, Stacy, I hear that. I'm not really willing to honor that. So what do you want me to, like, what do you want to do? Like, maybe we just don't go to the beach. Maybe we go on a trip together, but we don't go to the beach. That would be maybe a
okay,
reasonable
right.
compromise.
Okay,
Like
fine.
that's how
But
most
I
people work
think our
with boundaries. And none of this is
I think
moral.
our
She's allowed to make the
no,
ask and
I
I'm
do
allowed to
think
say
that
no. It's
okay,
all
this is where
okay.
we disagree. This is where we disagree because of course she's allowed to make the ask, but I think
Yeah.
that her making that ask is antisocial in and of itself.
But you're
She
using
should
this in a
not be
moralizing way,
requesting
right?
because being antisocial, generally speaking, is
Except in the
wrong. You
case of
should go
female
with
genital
social norms.
mutilation, because you said that it would be
That's why I said
antisocial to,
generally. That's why I said generally. Yes.
yeah, so this
Generally
is
speaking,
so this is
doing
why I said
antisocial things like
yes,
being
we should
naked
make
or saying
antisocial a
slurs
moral
in
word,
public is
which is what I
generally
suggested
also
initially.
immoral.
Okay, so you would like to moralize the word antisocial. So it's not about violating social customs, it's typically about doing something bad. And most people can agree that violating social customs isn't in and of itself necessarily bad, right? And so in the case of like whether the antisocial behavior is immoral as well, the main question people are going to pose is, has harm been done or some form of like hostility or aggression been done, right? So if my friend in the same situation asks me not to wear a bikini, right? Well, part of what we would determine whether or not she was being antisocial in this case is whether she asks me politely and apologetically because she knows that she's putting like a major ask on me that's maybe not fair, or if she demands it and calls me a dirty whore. Right? This would change how we all feel about the boundary, even though the boundary is fundamentally the same here. Because it's not the
Right,
boundary that
but
matters, it's all the
hospitality
context and subject around it.
the fact that hospitality is a social norm, hospitality towards each other in a shared house is an American social norm. Now, that woman in this hypothetical feels entitled to break that social norm, which is generally antisocial behavior, because she has the concept of a boundary, which is a personal rule that you are entitled to set towards others. Now, of course, you can't enforce that they follow it, but you are morally within your right to create a rule based on your preferences that you ask others to follow. So the fact that boundaries exist as a concept that is generally seen as morally good, you should set boundaries, you should express your boundaries.
I think it's
It
amoral.
gives
I think
people
most people recognize most of this in the space of amorality. It's not moral at all. It's arbitrary.
I I I I think that people will admit that boundaries can be ridiculous, but generally speaking, in modern society, expressing, maintaining, and having boundaries is encouraged. Do you disagree with that?
But that doesn't make it moral.
No, it does. If you're encouraging people to do something, generally that means that's good for them and it is morally good.
No, wearing
Yeah.
deodorant is not moral, but we definitely encourage you to do it. Brushing your teeth isn't moral, but we definitely encourage you to do it. We encourage people to do things that are amoral all the time. Not everything has to exist within the lands of moral or immoral. Most things, in fact, in life
That's
are
not true.
amoral. Most things in
That's
life are
not true.
amoral.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that or
Is
not, but
brushing
like
my
for
hair
the
moral or
example you gave,
immoral?
you said brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is moral because it takes care of yourself and your breath doesn't smell around other people, which is good. I mean, it might be low on the morality scale, but like it's good.
It's not
It's not
moral.
neutral.
What is there anything in your world that's amoral?
I mean, what color dress you wear is amoral, sure.
What about at
What
a
color
funeral?
shirt you pick. Yeah, it would no, I mean, yeah, except for like there are exceptions. If you wear bright pink to a funeral, you're being antisocial, which is wrong. You shouldn't do that.
Okay.
You're disrespecting the funeral ritual. That's wrong.
Okay, look, you've been consistent. You're just being absurd now. What I would say
What
is,
you if your husband died and someone wore a bright pink, like hot pink dress, you
uh,
wouldn't feel disrespected. You wouldn't feel like they're
my
doing
husband is
something
dead.
wrong.
I know. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about this shit. My husband's dead.
You wouldn't feel you feel disrespected by people not wearing shoes in the house. You wouldn't feel
No,
disrespected if
you
somebody
said I feel
wore a hot
disrespected. Hold
pink
on, Grace.
club dress
Grace,
to your
you're.
husband's
Hold
funeral?
on. No, no, no. You're the one that feels the need to moralize everything, not me. I don't feel disrespected. I don't think somebody's done something immoral because they've worn shoes in the house. I would just prefer if they don't. I don't think somebody's done something immoral by wearing a pink dress. It's weird. It's really weird. But it's not immoral. It's not bad. I'm not like have negative moral evaluations of this person.
You're saying it's absurd to expect people to be respectful and
No,
follow traditions at a
no,
funeral, like
nope.
wearing
That's not
hot
what I
pink.
said. No, stop, stop, stop. That's not what I said. I
You
said it
said
is.
that was absurd.
No, I said it is absurd to not view many things as amoral. I think it is absurd to think that brushing your teeth is a moral action.
It has a moral implication. It has a low moral implication.
No,
It
that's what
does.
I'm. No, so again, I understand that you feel that way. I am saying to you,
Taking care of yourself is not
you.
morally neutral. It's morally good.
No, I think it's pretty
That's just
morally neutral.
true.
No,
No, it isn't. If you don't take care of your own body, you're hurting yourself. That's morally wrong.
I do not
I
think
mean,
that
like,
not
there are
brushing your
reasons
teeth.
that people do that. Of course, it could be mitigated by factors like depression or whatever, but generally speaking, it is a moral good to take care of your body and be healthy.
It's definitely a
Is it a
wiser
moral
thing to
good to take
do.
care of your children? If you have children, is it neutral if you take care of their bodies and keep them clean and well fed, or
No,
is
that's
that
a
a
moral
moral
good.
good? And
Yeah,
if you don't do
caring
it, you're bad.
like caring for the
Because why wouldn't that be
vulnerable,
true for yourself?
because it's not about it's about caring for vulnerable individuals that did not volunteer, right? That you opted to have and bring into this world. You have a duty and responsibility to care for them and ensure their well-being. You don't actually have a
And
duty.
you don't have a duty and responsibility to care for yourself?
No, not really. It's better if you do.
That's it's better. Okay, so it's good.
No, Kate Grace. So you can use the term
What do you mean by
better.
better if you're not referring to morality?
It's healthier
Well, I
for
know
you.
that's a
Better as
stupid
in
thing
like
because
it
you
will
could
make
say
your
like
body more healthy.
right, which is good.
No. So again,
No?
you can't conceive of a world where something might be good but not moral?
But good is a moral term.
So when I say this
It just
cake is
means
good,
moral.
does that mean that it's a moral cake?
No, but you don't mean it in terms of morality. You mean it in terms of quality.
Correct. Yes. That's what I mean when I say quality of body, right? You can have things that are good that are not moral. We got there. Good job, Grace.
You don't have to be condescending. But
That's true.
okay.
I definitely don't have to be condescending, but I'm not really being condescending.
I would like to
Just so
set
it's
a
clear.
boundary that
Just so
you
it's
don't be
clear.
condescending
I'm
when
not being
perfectly
condescending to
polite in
you.
the
I'm being
conversation.
belittling. I'm being belittling because you're being absurd and
Okay.
stupid. Yeah.
Well, I think that's rude. I'm being perfectly polite. I'm not insulting you. I'm just trying to have a good faith conversation. I really am.
I don't know if I would characterize this as good faith, but I do think you're trying to have a conversation, which is fine.
Okay, so I would prefer it if you didn't belittle me when I maybe get confused or make a point that you can win on. Like,
I
there's
can't
no need to
promise
do
that.
anyways. Okay, well, you are disrespecting my boundary, I suppose. You're
But are you
disrespecting social norms.
but are
in
you
fact.
bad for asking me that, or am I bad for not honoring
No,
your
because I'm
boundary?
asking you to respect social norms, which is that if somebody's being good faith, you aren't.
Well,
You don't
technically
insult
you're
them.
in my house because you asked to come on my stream. So now whose
Okay,
norms do we go
one of the
by?
rules of your house was not get ready to be belittled. But if that is one of your rules, that's fine.
My
Yeah, I'd have
server's
to
like
respect your rules.
my server's pretty open about being mean to each other. Belittling's like
Okay,
being
well, I
mean.
think you would. I don't think you would. I don't think you'd be okay if I was rude to you. I think you'd boot me, but okay, whatever.
That's definitely not true.
Call,
That's definitely not true. I have leftists. Look, I talk to leftists all the time, and they are nothing but rude and belittling, and I don't kick them. I typically take whatever I dish. Like people are mean to me. I mean, you watch me, like Gavin McInnes made fun of my miscarriage and told me I was a lesser woman, and I just like laughed it off. I can absolutely take heat, like unquestionably. I absolutely will take whatever I dish.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you another question. Okay, in terms of this antisocial stuff. Okay, so
we have 5 minutes.
Do you think it would be antisocial?
Just as a heads up. That's a boundary, by the way.
So that's not really a boundary, but
no, it's a boundary. Because I might continue talking. It's just my boundary with you. You have 5 minutes left.
It's just a rule. It's different than an interpersonal boundary. But
didn't you say boundaries are basically just rules, though, that you're enforcing on other people? It's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah,
like,
but it's
like theoretically could just keep going.
I wanted to ask you, what is an example? You said, I'm just curious. You said with your husband, you might set a boundary that he doesn't feel comfortable with. Could you give me an example of what that would be, like in a couple situation?
I'm so sorry. Somebody made a joke in my chat and I got distracted. Can you just ask me that again? I'm very sorry. I will focus.
Yeah, sure.
Ignore my chat.
No, that's fine. I laugh at chat all the time. What is an example? You said that you might set a boundary with your husband that he might not be comfortable with, and then you talk about it and come to some sort of agreement. What is an example of a boundary that you would set within marriage? I'm just curious. Like, hypothetically, what would you say you might set?
So he does this thing where, so we've got like this dresser, and he sets like all of his clothes that he promises he's going to wear tomorrow up on, because he doesn't like to like re-hang up his clothes if they're not like dirty enough to like go in the laundry or whatever. But he never actually wears the clothes the next day. So eventually there'll be a pile of like 7 days of outfits on top of the dresser. And so I've basically made a boundary of, if he's not going to wear the clothes tomorrow, when he wakes up in the morning, I need him to hang it up or put it in the laundry hamper so that I don't have to keep doing that. And so his compromise, he was like, oh, but so initially I said, so my original boundary is, please don't put anything on the dresser. And so he said, oh, but I really like to do this specific thing. So the compromise was, okay, you can put one outfit on there overnight, but if you don't wear it the next morning, you do have to like clean it up in the morning because you opt not to wear that outfit. So that's like a really arbitrary boundary. Clothes on the dresser is not immoral. It's not bad of him to do. I just don't like it. I'd prefer my house to be tidier, on the tidier side. And then because he had some reason for why he was doing it, we compromised to, honor his reason that he liked to do it, while also trying to like honor my preference for higher levels of cleanliness in the house.
I mean, my reaction to that is I just feel like that sounds incredibly controlling. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I didn't grow up in that kind of household, but
I've got 8 years of a very, very happy marriage, and you are, I think, still single. So that's okay if you think that way, but unfortunately, I wouldn't say it's controlling.
Well, it was open at a certain point, so I don't know how happy it was.
It was never open, and it's very happy. Exceptionally happy, actually.
You guys went on dates with other people.
He went on a date once, yeah.
Okay.
But just so it's clear, when you say open, everyone thinks that we're having sex with other people, right? And that's never what happened. And it was never the plan.
It was opened up to dates on Tinder. Yep. I'll be more specific.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. So, I don't know. You want to flex your
my 8 year
life,
my 8 year successful marriage.
They have glass houses, but go ahead.
Girlfriend, I can assure you, you're the one in the glass house is not me. We have an extremely successful, happy relationship.
I was just giving you my honest reaction. You don't have to be defensive. I'm just saying, to me,
it's not defensive. The issue is, I'm telling you,
maybe it's not.
Yeah. So I'm telling you about a thing that happens, and I'm saying this is all neutral, and you're going, wow, you're a pretty immoral person. It's like, no. So it's pretty normal. It's pretty normal that two people, usually in a couple, one person is generally going to have some preferences for cleanliness that are higher than the other, because not everyone's going to be completely equal in conscientiousness. Nick also has like certain preferences as well that he asks for me to do that I don't care about doing and wouldn't do otherwise, but I do it because he asks me to, unless I have a specific reason that I don't want to do it, and then we find a compromise. And this is not controlling. This is very standard relationships.
Well, yeah, of course you have to have compromise and different preferences. I agree. And like every couple has their own, every marriage has their own way of figuring things out. So like I'm not really one to judge your personal,
Well, you are.
interactions with your husband.
Well, you are judging it.
I'm just saying your example of it, if you said like I think that's perfectly healthy, I would say it's not necessarily that you have a preference about the dresser that's unhealthy. It's just the fact that you don't really use the word boundary. So I think you actually kind of agree with me that it's like kind of a ridiculous thing to do.
It's arbitrary. Yeah.
But
It's not that meaningful, right? Like clothes being on the dresser or not doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything about my life. It's not bad of him to do. It's just neutral. I just prefer it.
yeah, nobody's going to say like it's really moral what you do with clothes. I agree.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I
Asking
think you
him
actually
to
do it.
change what he's doing with his clothes is also
You would
pretty
not
amoral.
you it doesn't sound to me like what you would say to your husband is, "Hey, I'm setting a boundary of X." What you would say instead is like, "I would prefer it if you did X for this reason, and if you say something else like we'll work it out." Right? Well, that seems totally normal to me. I think you agree with me that using the word boundary, I think you actually agree that it implies sort of an expected respect of the boundary inherently. And it's sort of like it's very loaded, it's a very loaded word, and if you start saying boundary in a relationship, you actually, it seems to me by your actions, agree that it's sort of a way of asserting power, and you don't want to do that with your husband, so you introduce it more normally. And so I think we actually do agree that saying you're setting a boundary for someone is, I don't know how to say it, it is sort of antisocial.
Well, I
It
think what you're
is
saying,
it is
so I think
antisocial.
where we can meet is when specifically, usually white women, you preempt something by saying, this is my boundary. You know that you're buckling up for the most obnoxious bullshit ever that you definitely don't want to give her and is out of pocket for her to ask of you based on your established relationship, right? That's what you're usually buckling up for.
Generally, yeah.
Sure. But what we started with the conversation is boundaries themselves are bad. And it's like, no, boundaries. So what I'm doing with Nick is a boundary. I'm not saying it in an obnoxious way, obviously. And I agree that if you establish boundaries, but with an obnoxious like way of establishing it, A, nobody's going to listen to your boundary because you're being obnoxious. And B, it's going to be bad for your relationship because people don't like when you're being obnoxious towards them, right? But the boundaries themselves are usually amoral. There are some boundaries, though, that if you give me an example, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably unfair to do, right? This is why I said boundaries are mostly subjective and arbitrary, right? Sometimes they can be immoral. Mostly they're amoral. Depends. It sounds like the main thing you're concerned with is you have a heuristic that when people say this thing, they're doing not sure what. Sounds like you think there's a power trip going on. Usually when I hear that, I don't know what's going on, but I know it's something annoying. I don't know what it is. It might just be that like she's a fragile little bitch. It might be that she does want to control my behavior. It might be that she like thinks that she's on like this moral pious position and that like everyone ought to do this thing because she said the magical psycho Bible. I don't know. I don't care. I just know something's afoot and she's probably going to be an annoying person. But boundaries themselves are not bad, and I almost always honor them as much as I possibly can because like they're fine.
But I would just say, and I know you said 5 minutes, so I'll dip off, but it sounds to me like what you're saying. I just personally, I don't think anybody has ever heard somebody say, "Hey, just want to let you know my boundary is X," and not thought, "Okay, I'm about to get, this is antisocial what she's doing to me or what they are doing to me, and I'm about to hear some bullshit."
Sure, the
I
issue
think that
is
is generally people's experience of the word boundary, which is why I think it's we shouldn't promote it. It doesn't, generally
the word.
speaking, it's been like ruined as a
Um,
concept.
I think it's a decent heuristic that you're having. Just like I said, I also have that knee jerk, but usually I'm still thoughtful enough to go, well, let's just hear what she has to say. Because what if she's just like, nervous and shy and she thinks that this is the way she's supposed to communicate these things. I don't know. Like there could be a million reasons why she's using the word boundary in such a way that's actually totally fine. Right? Where she's like, it's my boundary that like I prefer this thing. And I might be like, that's a really weird thing. And I might interrogate a little bit and then I go, oh, okay, this is just like a random little preference that she has. That's totally fine. And she's being chill about it. Then I'd be totally fine. Like, yes, it's a heuristic that you can use. No, you should not just assume if somebody says the word boundary that something bad is afoot or that boundaries themselves are bad. Boundaries are fine. In fact, usually boundaries are good and they happen all the time and they're healthy.
I think we do disagree on that, but I'll leave you with that. Just one last thing. Could you unban my dad from your channel chat? It's Ben Thorpe, aka Abel. I think he said you would do it last time, and if you never got around to it, he just wanted to be unbanned.
Sure, but he can't say anything weird sexual about me. I think that's why he got banned last time, so he needs to stop with that.
We'll see if he respects that boundary.
Well, if
bye.
he doesn't,
Thanks
he's
for having
banned.
me up.
Okay, bye. Why is Erudite being so pedantic? Because the conversation was inherently pedantic. It was about the word boundary forever. Because Grace was like, boundaries are bad. And I'm like, I don't think you mean that. Just like, yes, like we started here, boundaries are bad. And we ended with, I don't like it as a heuristic when I hear some white bitch going, I have a boundary, which is totally fine. Everyone has that heuristic because everyone knows exactly what she means when she's saying that. But that's not the same thing as saying all boundaries are bad. And obviously not all boundaries are bad. So it was pedantic inherently.